Weather Channel presents a special Tornado Week episode of Storm Stories.
August 11th, 1999. Salt Lake City, Utah. Severe thunderstorms are brewing near the downtown. The Salt Lake Valley typically gets brief showers, and most storms start in the mountains. But this storm is different. It forms over the valley. Around 11 a.m., cold, unstable air sweeps in from the Pacific Ocean and collides with warm, moist air coming up from Arizona. The weather pattern is about to produce something rare for Salt Lake: a tornado.
We had an area of disturbed weather coming in from the west. It destabilizes the atmosphere and creates thunderstorms. And since we had the moisture, everything just seemed to come together right over the valley.
It's 12:45 p.m. Sterling Polson, a local TV meteorologist, is off work and shopping at a downtown mall. As he leaves a store and walks through the parking garage, Sterling notices what looks like a plume of smoke in the sky.
I saw a transformer explode, and I thought, that's not just a fire. I could see the dust of what I thought was smoke was actually moving.
Polson runs to a different corner of the garage to get a better view. At that moment, he realizes what he's seeing.
This is a very freak tornado. I never thought I'd see a tornado like that here. There's something really crazy going on here.
What's happened is opposing winds from the thunderstorms have collided with a breeze off the Great Salt Lake. They've created an updraft near the ground, igniting the storm's rotation. The result is a non-descending tornado, which means instead of snaking down from the sky, its rotation has rapidly formed from the ground up.
This is the type of thunderstorm that produced the tornado quickly, probably less than 5 minutes. So it's really not something you can warn people about until you know it's on the ground.
The surprise twister barrels toward an unlikely target: downtown Salt Lake City. A few blocks away, at the Salt Palace Convention Center, unsuspecting vendors are getting ready for the Outdoor Retailer Show, which is set to open the next day. More than 800 manufacturers have come from around the country to show off the latest in outdoor gear and apparel. Larry Schmidt and his wife Pat are sales reps for a company that makes sunglasses. Married for 12 years, the Schmidts are outdoor enthusiasts from Breckenridge, Colorado. The couple is assigned to one of two huge tents set up to house the overflow. While getting their display ready, Larry notices the sky is turning dark.
You could see the clouds rolling in, and it happened very, very fast. And so we were wondering if maybe we just brought the weather with us from Colorado.
Meanwhile, in the second tent, 3 local audio-visual technicians are helping other vendors with their displays. Jeff Hansen, Scott Ellenwood, and Darren Loyola are co-workers who have worked this event for 3 years now. Suddenly, hail begins pounding the tents, accompanied by heavy rain and strong winds.
It was raining so hard, and it was like being inside of a drum because the tent is made of vinyl.
The intensifying storm worries Larry's wife, Pat. She thinks they should find a more stable shelter, but he is less concerned.
It was a tent that was set up for an event. It had to be a strong structure. A little bitty thunderstorm couldn't really cause everybody to move and the tent to blow over.
A few blocks away at the mall parking garage, Sterling Polson knows this is more than a thunderstorm. It's an F1 twister, the low end of the Fujita scale that rates a tornado's strength. Sterling runs through the parking garage to get a cell phone from his car. He frantically dials into his station.
They transferred me into the control room, and I'm screaming, "Put me on the air." My heart was pounding in my chest, the adrenaline was rushing, and the wind was blowing pretty strong.
Polson gives audio broadcasts from his cell phone as he watches the twister slam into some of downtown Salt Lake's most prominent buildings. 2 blocks away, a home video camera captures the powerful funnel as it triggers explosions. Then it descends on the Delta Center, home of the NBA's Utah Jazz. The tornado peels back sections of the roof and hurls them into the air. Its winds are nearing 110 miles an hour. Next, it sweeps toward the Wyndham Hotel. The tornado shatters the hotel's windows and strips the front awning from its frame. The twister is now just across the street from the tents at the outdoor retailer show. Inside, Larry Schmidt notices the wind is rattling the rafters. His wife, Pat, nervously edges toward an exit.
And I wasn't so concerned until a half a second later I looked up and saw it peeling the top off of the tent. Then I knew that we should get out.
The tornado begins to devour the tent. Home video captures the moment it starts to dissolve. Schmidt spots an exit and yells to his wife to follow. She is just a few feet behind when Larry makes it to the French glass doors that lead outside.
I don't even touch the door. It's the force of the wind that not only sucks it open, but sucks the glass out of the door.
Larry is yanked into the raging storm. He's sure that his wife has been pulled with him.
The whole time I thought she was shortly behind me. I was just struggling to stay upright and to move any direction.
Buffeted by the brutal winds, Larry can't turn his head to look for Pat. He runs toward the Salt Palace Convention Center, thinking he's leading them both to safety. Inside the second tent, technician Darren Loyola and his two co-workers, Jeff Hansen and Scott Ellenwood, are standing near an exit door when waves of panic erupt.
The tent just rips open right at its seam, and about 20 people come running towards the entrance of the tent.
Darren and Scott take off, and I'm thinking, it's time for me to get out of this tent as well.
People wanted to get out of that tent. They were panicked. I didn't know why they were running, but I figured there's got to be a pretty good reason.
As he was passing, some guy said, "Tornado, guys." And, it didn't, just kind of hit me kind of weird, tornado. My only thought was to run.
Darren and Scott begin throwing their weight against the door, but the tornado's winds force it shut, trapping them inside. Moments later, the wind shifts and Darren and Scott plunge outside into the storm. The door slams shut before Jeff can escape.
There was nobody else there. There was nobody else there helping me.
Out in the open, Darren and Scott know they have to run for their lives.
It was just so close and it was so massive. It was like, holy cow.
I looked over my right shoulder and saw this swirling brown cloud and debris flying horizontally.
You're just like in slow motion. I look over my shoulder and the thing's it's closer than it was before.
This thing was coming up way too fast. When I was little, I used to have nightmares about them, and all of a sudden your whole nightmare comes true.
Darren and Scott look for any place to take cover, but there's only a parking lot in front of them. They may not make it to shelter in time. Moments later, Jeff Hansen forces his way out of the tent and sees the twister for the first time. He can't believe what he's looking at.
It was right on top of me. Kind of like looking down inside of a blender. I just remember thinking, wow, that looks just like a tornado. But of course it's not, because we don't have those in Salt Lake.
Hansen knows he's in danger and sprints toward his van. He battles ferocious winds as he scrambles through a maze of 8-foot-tall shipping crates. Jeff is several yards away from his van when a 300-pound crate topples over onto him.
One of them blew over on my back and caught me totally by surprise from behind.
Jeff struggles from beneath the heavy crate and fights the last few steps to his van.
I close the door and look out the window and see Darren and Scott running across the street. And it looked like the tornado was following right after them. I started noticing that I couldn't catch my breath, and I was just constantly gasping for air.
Hansen thinks the crate has only knocked the wind out of him, but then he begins feeling faint.
I lay down in the back of my van and started panicking. I couldn't catch my breath, and that just made things worse.
20 yards away, Darren and Scott are also feeling powerless. The tornado is bearing down on them.
It kind of hit me, this could be it. This is serious, There's no getting away from this thing. That was my initial fear, was the thing was gonna overtake me and just fling me somewhere.
August 11th, 1999. It's about 12:50 p.m. and downtown Salt Lake City, Utah is in the grip of a tornado. It's tearing through one of the tents at the outdoor retailer show. From a downtown parking garage, local TV meteorologist Sterling Polson is watching the horrific scene.
Stuff just flew everywhere. And then people on the street below, you could see people running away from the tornado.
For convention workers Darren Loyola and Scott Ellenwood, the tornado seems inescapable. It's just half a block behind them.
The wind was just so powerful. You're running and you're not going anywhere.
The two men dash into the street in the middle of traffic. Scott makes it across the road, but Darren gets left behind when he dodges an approaching car. In a split second, the friends get separated.
All of a sudden, Darren was gone. It freaked me out because, he's there 1 second, and then, the next thing I know, he's gone.
Scott sees people clinging to the thick branches of a nearby tree, and there's one branch left.
I run over to that thing, put a death grip on it. I'm holding onto that tree with everything I had.
30 feet away, Darren emerges from behind the car, but he can't find his buddy. All alone in the blinding winds, Darren tries to feel his way to shelter. He inches along until he finds the base of another tree. Gripping the trunk, he holds on for a rough ride.
I had my fingernails stuck right inside the bark, and I had my head down. My legs were flying back and forth. I just remember thinking, I'm not going to make it. Something's going to hit me. I'm going to lose my grip. Waiting to die. That's the worst.
Several yards away, Scott is struggling to keep hold of his own tree branch.
Well, the freakiest part was my feet coming off the ground. If it had enough power to lift me off the ground, there's no telling where I'd end up.
Fighting winds upwards of 110 miles an hour, Scott pulls his body toward the ground, wraps himself around the tree, and waits. The tornado continues its assault. People huddle on their knees near cars, hoping to make it through the storm. Back near the tents, Larry Schmidt is being lashed by the twister. He dives into a small space between a metal shipping container and an outdoor kiosk.
Things were happening so fast. You're just moving forward with all that emotion and energy, pushing you and pulling you.
Schmidt thinks his wife, Pat, is right behind him, but he suddenly realizes she's gone.
I tried to look out to see if I could see how close she was, if she was still struggling getting to me. And I couldn't get my head out of that opening. I knew that it was like putting your head on a chopping block.
He turns to look out the other side of his hiding place for Pat. At that moment, the wind stops. Larry bolts from his spot and retraces his steps, but his wife is nowhere in sight. The tornado moves north and continues to tear through downtown. It slams into a 90-ton construction crane, sending one of its limbs into a building. Then, the twister gathers strength, becoming an F2. It uproots hundreds of trees and tears roofs off homes. It dips through a canyon before finally dissipating in the mountains. Back at the tents, eyewitnesses who captured the twister on home video take in the devastation. Survivors climb out from the rubble. They are filled with shock and disbelief. Across the street, Scott Ellenwood releases the tree he's been hanging onto. He stands up and quickly finds Darren Loyola.
Just this look of awe on his face. Seeing his face and how serious he looked, is what put it all together.
Then, Scott turns from his friend and begins to absorb the tornado's impact.
I just couldn't believe the amount of devastation. The tent just looked like a bomb hit it.
I've never seen anything like this. It's just indescribable.
Darren and Scott make their way back toward the tents to see if they can find their co-worker, Jeff Hansen. Hansen is laying in the back of his van, struggling to breathe after a 300-pound crate blew over on him.
I sat up between the seats of the van and where I could look out the window, and Darren was standing right outside the window of the van.
Jeff taps on the window to get his co-worker's attention. Darren opens the door and quickly realizes his friend is seriously injured. He alerts a bystander to get an ambulance. Less than a block away, Larry Schmidt is frantically searching for his wife, Pat. After making it back to what's left of the tent, he finds her unconscious and pinned beneath the wall of a construction trailer. Larry's experience as a ski patrolman kicks in. He reaches out to touch Pat's ankle, which is sticking out from the rubble, and takes her vital signs.
I had checked her pulse and her foot to see if there was one, and once I found that, then I started moving around trying to find a forklift.
While Larry scrambles for help, other vendors rush over and lift the debris off the injured 43-year-old. An off-duty nurse holds Pat's head while another volunteer tries to awaken her.
Pat, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Pat, squeeze my hand.
12:55 p.m. Salt Lake City rescue teams pour into downtown. They quickly set up a triage area. Larry directs paramedics to his wife. Within minutes, they are on their way to the University of Utah hospital.
We were the first ones there, so there were people lined up in the halls and just everywhere. They were waiting. They were waiting for the first victims to show up.
A team of doctors descends on Pat. She's suffering from a severe head injury and slips into a coma. On August 11, 1999, an F2 tornado cut a 4-mile-long swath through Salt Lake City. It was on the ground for 14 minutes, damaging hundreds of homes and buildings. The total bill would come to nearly $170 million. One person was killed. At least 80 people were injured, many of them in the tents at the Outdoor Retailers Convention. But that toll could have been far worse. The tornado struck just one day before the show opened to thousands of people. Jeff Hansen was injured when a shipping crate slammed into his back. It broke 3 ribs and punctured a lung, but he suffered no long-term health effects.
Watching the destruction and realizing that I was in the middle of that, I couldn't believe that I actually came through it.
Jeff and his co-workers, Scott Ellenwood and Darren Loyola, were profoundly affected by the twister.
We've been through a life-changing experience together. Got to have some kind of bond.
Even sometimes now, when it starts getting windy, I'll kind of shake a little bit and kind of look around in the sky.
Pat Schmidt suffered a traumatic head injury. Doctors believe debris from the tornado inflicted the damage, causing severe bleeding in Pat's brain. She spent about 45 days in a coma. But she slowly awakened. She endured months of recovery in the hospital and has since undergone years of intensive rehabilitation.
Simple things like tying a shoe, things that we take for granted. It was essentially she was reborn again. Oh, yeah.
And then
There are many, many people that we're going to run into that are...
Pat has no memory of the tornado. She still suffers from a condition that limits her speech, but not her comprehension. With the support of her husband, Larry, family, and friends, Pat has returned to being an active outdoors woman. She even ran a leg of the Olympic torch relay in Colorado as it traveled west to Salt Lake for the 2000 Games.
We never spend much time dwelling on extracting from a doctor what will be her outcome years from now. We're just very blessed that we have the time.
Salt Lake City has rebuilt, but the first deadly twister in its history has left an indelible impression.
I think a tornado can do more damage in a small area than any other weather phenomena that there is. Tornadoes are quick, they're deadly, and they're monsters.
How common are non-descending tornadoes? Non-descending tornadoes, or tornadoes that build from the ground up, are more common than you might think. One study of 52 twisters indicated that 48% were non-descending. The rest were descending tornadoes, which snaked down from the sky. For Storm Stories, I'm meteorologist Jim Cantori. Your local forecast is next. A tornado levels an entire town. Now the fate of a family trapped in the rubble lies in the hands of a teenager. This amazing story is next on Storm Stories.
Unbelievable.